What it is, people, my name is Batman, and yesterday IGN proved once and for all that it really is on Activision's payroll when it comes to Call of Duty, but it's not actually bribes of currency, of course, because it would be illegal for IGN not to disclose that, for the same reasons those big YouTubers got in some hot water last year for not disclosing they were paid up to $100,000 to talk up BF4 on its release. Instead, there is a de facto quid pro quo relationship where Activision gives IGN the exclusive scoop on all the new info they want to release, and in return, IGN gives a favorable review and thus is invited back the next year to get the exclusive scoop on all the new info again. They never actually discuss the terms of this agreement, they just have a mutual and unspoken understanding that that is how it works. Never has this been more obvious than yesterday in the stellar review that IGN gave Modern Warfare 3 Survival Mode. You know those ads you see on TV sometimes where a paid actor gives a fake testimonial telling you how effective this pill or that cleaning utensil is? The IGN review basically could have been that. It was genuinely annoying to me, and you've never heard me really bitch about this subject in particular, the game reviewers giving games an easy pass so that they can get an easy pass, but yesterday in particular, it seemed a little too obvious because they were talking up, how much fun they had with this game mode that is for all intents and purposes MW3 Survival Mode revived. I mean, there was no huge differences that I read about that they described that weren't in MW3 Survival Mode. Probably the biggest difference is that in MW3 Survival Mode, you had to go around to boxes on the maps to buy your guns and kill streaks and whatnot. In this time around, it seems like you just level up on your own. But it's the same shit with the same, you get a bonus objective every 10 rounds. That's exactly what it used to be in MW3 Survival. And they spent like 2 pages of review, just sucking on this thing's cock. And it just, you don't have to necessarily give it a negative review. Why even do a review period? Just call a spade a fucking spade. They are bringing back survival mode from MW3. It doesn't need a review, it's just, maybe an announcement. Now, maybe this isn't the only co-op mode coming to the game. Alright, last year around this same time for Ghosts, they were talking about squad safeguard mode and whatnot, and nobody knew anything about Extinction until about 2 weeks before the game's release. And of course, Extinction ended up being the sort of primary co-op game in Ghosts, and Safeguard was just kind of like the equivalent of combat training from Black Ops. It's very possible, in fact I consider it more likely than not, that this is the route Sledgehammer takes as well. What it comes down to is marketing, and that's why they did a review of MW3 Survival Mode in AW when they could have just announced that MW3 Survival Mode was coming to AW. It's all about getting attention, generating hype, and the free publicity that comes with these announcements. If you pay attention to that little trending section on Facebook, you'll notice Advanced Warfare is trending today because of this announcement. It spikes interest. Everyone is searching to see what exactly is going on. All the big YouTubers who serve as the sort of de facto advertisers for COD are all churning out their videos about the announcements. Those videos will end up reaching millions. And then, of course, there are the smaller channels like myself who will all have something to say about it as well. And COD gets a bunch of publicity. And then if they do announce a second co-op mode, as Ghost did, they'll get a whole new round of attention when the time comes. And something else to keep in mind, if you look back at past CODs, Zombies, and Extinction, they got their own trailers. This new co-op mode was sort of couched in a very general game trailer that had bits of campaign and multiplayer as well. It was named Power Changes Everything. Could have swore they already named the last 3 trailers that, but whatever. So that also makes me think that there's something else in the works here, because if this was really their only co-op mode, they would have talked it up a little more, unless they know that it sucks, in which case they're just trying to announce it like as discreetly as possible. But I doubt that. Instead, I think they've actually just made a grave miscalculation, in that it seems like the vast majority of people are wholly unimpressed with this, and COD is getting backlash more than hype from this announcement, which is very understandable, and if this really is as good as it gets for the new co-op mode, that is simply unacceptable. There's a reason people are not taking to this very kindly, and that's because despite the ass-kissing slob on Activision's knob review that IGN gave, people know what this is, because gamers are smarter than the average consumer. And they've seen this twice before, and they were wholly unimpressed with it both times. I don't think anyone really got that into Squads mode in Ghosts, nor MW3 Survival, because it was obviously half-assed. They stuck it in at the last minute after already doing Spec Ops, just because the COD population had a massive hard-on for wave defense following the huge addictive success of Black Ops 1 Zombies. I had some fun on MW3 Survival, but it was nothing compared to Zombies, or Extinction for that matter. What it comes down to is how much of the game was designed specifically for wave defense. Just the act of putting it on multiplayer maps, which is what they're doing, really prevents the co-op mode itself from being anything special on its own. The biggest problem with wave defense on maps designed for multiplayer, and this is true in MW3 and Ghosts as well, is that huge swaths of the map, probably the majority of the map, is a moot point, largely useless and irrelevant to the gameplay experience. Reason being is that there's generally that one spot on each map that is the most effective area to defend. Often a small room with a window and only one entrance, and then the trick is finding that spot on each map, holding it down, and that's the best way to get to a high round every time. For instance, on a map like Prison Break, if you've ever played Squad Safeguard mode, on Prison Break your best bet is to camp in that tower. There's absolutely no strategic benefit or any other gameplay enhancing enjoyable thing of any kind that can be experienced by traveling around the map outside of the designated camping spot. The exact opposite is true for Zombies and Extinction, because Zombies and Extinction maps are designed, obviously, with wave defense in mind. Every part of the map adds to the experience, whether it's getting to this room to get to this weapon or perk, or searching all around for attachments or parts, or intel, or Easter eggs, or fucking collecting propane tanks, or simply exploring more of the story, which is woven into the very environment itself in these game modes. The map is the biggest part of the equation, and it is rich and deep, whereas multiplayer maps are glorified sports fields. They're designed for competitions, not for a true player versus environment experience. And with that in mind, when it's on MP maps, you can't really give it its own story. In any player versus environment game mode, the map itself generally tells a huge part of the story, like when you fought at the White House in MW2. The story was a huge part of the appeal for Zombies for many people. My favorite map as far as the story goes was Shangri-La, which provides an in-depth narrative that you slowly unravel throughout the gameplay, as is true for basically all of the Zombies maps, because all of the Zombies maps have huge amounts of lore behind them. This is also true for Extinction. However, I personally found it a lot harder to follow the Extinction plotline. I never had any idea what the fuck was going on, but I knew something was going on. There was purpose. There was some narrative to explain why we were where we were. Say that 3 times fast. But they're not going to be able to provide a coherent narrative when the game mode is taking place across every multiplayer map. They could have a general premise, such as something vague and basic, like these are areas the enemy wants, go prevent them from getting them. But there wouldn't be a plot line with characters who develop from map to map, and the maps themselves aren't going to be able to tell much of a story on their own either, because I highly doubt they were designed with telling a story in mind. And they shouldn't have been, because they're goddamn multiplayer maps and should be designed with multiplayer in mind. But then, sticking other PvE game modes on said maps is just plain lazy. So when it's all said and done, Exo Survival and how it's received by the community will be dependent on one factor. If this is supposed to be the equivalent of Zombies or Extinction, then GG Sledgehammer, you guys can suck my dick. You had 3 years, this is not up to snuff of motherfuckers who had just 1 year. However, if this is meant to be the equivalent of, say, Squad Safeguard mode or combat training, and there is a superior co-op mode rivaling Zombies and Extinction that has yet to be announced, then well played, because this actually looks superior to Safeguard. I think what they should do is bring back Chaos mode. Remember Chaos mode from MW3? They tried to bring it back in Extinction, and it wasn't really the same for a variety of reasons, though mainly the aliens' mobility, which completely ruined the fun of just spraying into groups of enemies, and the strategy involved in getting them lined up correctly and keeping them in one direction while you gathered guns for multipliers. In the alien version, they just shoot you from every direction at all times. It sucks ass and perfectly demonstrates once again the incompetence of IW, who can tell when people like something but can never comprehend why. But in MW3 it was the shit, and I wanted them to bring it into Zombies, in fact, and I hope they still do, and I hope they bring it into AW as well. The FTW query of the day is, what is your favorite wave defense in Call of Duty and why? Because, you know, I like the story more in Zombies, but I got much more enjoyment out of the raw gameplay of Extinction. But of course, Chaos mode tops all, because I am a man who likes clusterfucks. Please rate. This is Batman signing out.